Welcome in, Fred.
Yeah, what's up?
Sometimes we have a little bit of technical difficulties.
Well.
But we're here, and we're chatting, and we're doing it, and we've got a good show for tonight. It is Tuesday, October 24th. I think, when's the last time I had you on? I had you on like 2 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah, maybe a couple weeks ago, yeah.
I'm trying to remember what we talked about during our little session. And it doesn't matter because tonight the NBA tips off. And I know for you, I actually asked Ellie, who a lot of people, if you watch the show, you guys know who she is now because I talk about her all the time and she comes on the show. I said, what topic do you think Fred would like to talk about the most? And she said NBA of all of our topics today. Do you think that's an accurate statement?
Yeah, maybe by a slight margin. It is the heart of football season, both college and pro. So the NBA getting going tonight. And should be a great season. I mean, a lot of storylines. Some locally. I was just looking at the Hawks over/under for wins is 42.5. So they're, I mean, they should be
so
decent
Hawks.
enough to be in the playoff hunt for sure. But they're going to really, really have to take a big step to get near the top of that Eastern Conference because it's kind of top heavy now, right? Wouldn't you agree with the Celtics and the Bucks?
Oh my gosh, for me the biggest, and this is my opinion, the biggest storyline from the offseason is what the Bucks did. I do think, again, in my opinion, I know that, for anybody who doesn't know Fred or doesn't know anything about his sports background, he loves Boston. He's from there. It's his jam.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, you would expect the Celtics to kind of pick up where they left off last season. But the most improved team to me, at least on the Eastern side of things, is definitely Milwaukee. And I think they're going to have all kinds of, the Hawks are going to have all kinds of issues with facing off against them.
Yeah, they're going to be a tough matchup for anybody. Dame and Giannis are going to have to play like two of the 5 or so best players in the world, I think, for them to win it. They did lose some other guys, Grayson Allen and some other pieces, I guess you could say, that make them a little more of a complete team. So they're going to really rely on their stars. Chris Middleton's going to, he's not going to have to show any signs of slowing down. But he is getting up there a little bit as far as age goes. So they're actually, I believe the Celtics have a slight edge on them in a lot of sports books, but they're pretty much neck and neck in terms of favorites to win the title. So I think actually both those teams are pretty tough matchups for the Hawks. The Celtics, the Hawks gave the Celtics a little bit of a run, last year in the playoffs, but weren't able to get it done. So I'm interested to see what kind of steps the Hawks can make under Quinn Snyder.
See that, and I think that's a really good statement that you're making. It's their first full season under Snyder. They had 21 games with him last year. I think it was 10 and 11 that they finished under Snyder. I don't think it's fair to assess how he is as a coach under the circumstances he was brought in under, as far as coming there with 20 plus games left, turning it around. He wasn't able to implement his system. So I think this year, we'll be able to see, what he is about offensively and defensively. And I will say his plan is for this team to be better defensively. But my issue with that, and I don't know how much of a say he has in this, again, this is still super young in his career here in Atlanta, but I don't think they made the roster moves to get better defensively.
I agree. They're a guard heavy team.
They're shooters.
Yeah, so it looks like Bogey's going to come off the bench. At least that was the lineup in the last preseason game, so we'll see how that goes. They're slightly better than middle of the road team, which is they were the 500, the epitome of 500 basketball last year for most of the season. Yeah, they were just one up, one down, and just within, a game or two of 500 throughout the entire year. And this year, I think they can be a little bit better. Be DeJounte Murray's second year. Trae Young hopefully can take another step, toward being a consistently, top maybe 7 or 8 or 10 guy in the league. But in general, you have, Vic coming in with the Spurs. You have Orlando, who I think is going to be better. Houston should be better with Ime Udoka coaching them. They have a lot of young, talented guys on that team. Oklahoma City, you got Chet coming back and playing, basically as a rookie, and they were a team that made some moves last year. I know there's a big suspension for Ja at the start of this year up in Memphis, but he could be back and they could be better than they were last year. So there's a lot of competition in the National Basketball Association this year.
Yeah, and I love that you said the whole thing right there.
Like that.
The entire, just when I think, Fred, you don't have
Right.
anything left, you give me the entire name of the NBA. You know who that makes me think of?
Yeah.
Another Fred Khalil,
Yeah.
our old sports director. He would always do that for everything. He would say it out loud, like LSU. He would actually say Louisiana State. I'm like, Fred, nobody says that. Nobody, but that's what he would do.
I don't know, it just came out.
I miss him dearly, and he was actually just texting me. He's living his best life out in Arizona with his wife.
Definitely.
But the 2 games tonight to get us started: Lakers at Nuggets, Suns at Warriors. That's a strong start for the NBA. That's a great slate there. Just 2 games. The Hawks don't play until tomorrow, 7:00 tip at the Hornets. They're back at home on Friday, and they'll get their home schedule started against the Knicks.
Yeah, and I've been saying a lot about the Falcons, the Commanders at home, and this is a little analogy to basketball here. The Hawks should win in Charlotte. Like, if they're going to be a decent team in the East, you have to be able to win in Charlotte. I know it's opening night, and it's an 82-game season, and there's a lot that can happen, but throughout the course of the season. But those are to me anyway, the measuring stick sort of games.
Yeah.
Where everybody's going to be playing. It's not resting anybody. It's not a back-to-back. It's none of that stuff. So just straight up Hawks, Charlotte, that should be a win for the Hawks. They should be coming back, with a win under their belt. But we'll see.
And I can't imagine that Friday night, State Farm Arena won't be rocking. It's game 1. I mean, that place should be packed. The Knicks are in town. It's not like going to the Knicks where everybody hates Trae Young. Trae Young is at home and in a very comfortable spot. I do have one thought before we move on to the next topic, though. I read an article, and I'm trying to remember what the actual publication was, but they were saying, this actual writer, it was an opinion piece saying how if the Hawks, don't do well this season and they fail, it won't be a coaching change that will happen. It will be a player change. And they were hinting to the fact that change would be Trae Young, who we all thought there might be that change this past offseason until he hit that 3 against your team to continue their playoff run. I mean, I wholeheartely believe that one play kept him in Atlanta.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean,
because I would say from an organizational standpoint, if it was one play that kept him there,
I think you see the greatness. You don't in that one.
I like Trae Young.
Yeah.
I do think he has some deficiencies, obviously, that there's nothing he can do about, and that's and certain teams are going to be able to pick on him defensively a little bit in the playoffs. But he's also been a huge playoff performer offensively, so he can offset that some. So we'll have to see how this year goes, but I would hope that shot didn't save his job, so to speak, or save his time here with the Hawks. But yeah, I agree with you. Right, because there's money invested now in Quinn Snyder, and I think this is a pivotal year for Trae. And
he's proven that he can win with other teams, so you would believe that maybe, we're not saying that's going to happen, but we are saying that could be a thing. Yeah. Moving on to the NLCS, Game 7, a nice juicy game tonight between the D-backs and the Phillies at Philadelphia. I think it's like an 8:07 first pitch. And, given the way Philly fans treated, the Braves when they were there, and I was actually watching the games heavily, I'm sure there is a very nice atmosphere waiting for the D-backs tonight.
I think the Braves, though, bring in a different type of cachet than the D-backs do.
Cachet. You're giving me all these words tonight, Fred.
Yeah.
Love it.
But the D-backs are underdogs, right? So I think Philly fans love it when it's a team like the Braves and they can, shout whatever they're going to shout as Philly fans, usually expletives, at the Braves. But now you have the D-backs, underdogs, kind of nothing to lose. Only won 84 games this year. We're on the ropes after losing at home in Game 5, and everyone. I think a lot of people thought Game 6 was just going to be Philly, and
I actually thought that.
Yeah, we all kind of did,
yeah.
And now you have Game 7, and it's amazingly the Phillies have been around forever, and they have never played a Game 7. until tonight.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, they've been around since I think the late 1880s or something.
Wait, of
along
any,
those lines.
like a game
They
7
have
of any
not played a
series?
game 7 ever.
Okay.
Ever.
So history's being made tonight.
Yeah, yeah, and the Diamondbacks' last game 7 that organization played was against the Yankees to win the World Series when Gonzalez hit the single off of Mariano Rivera to win that one.
Fred, this is such good info that I
Yeah.
did not know.
Yeah.
Do you have any feel for which way it's going to go? Because I do not. At this point, I never knew that the Diamondbacks would make it this far in the playoffs.
Right.
Kind of like the Rangers, like out of nowhere. So for me, I don't have a good feel for it. I certainly do think that the Phillies, you said that,
Yeah.
the D-backs have nothing to lose, and the Phillies have everything to lose because you kind of feel like they're right back where they were last season.
Right.
I do think they're playing with a chip on their shoulder. I think that's why they beat the Braves. They want to make it back to the World Series and actually win this time. I think that was, the goal since day one. It just took them a little bit longer to get their act together during the regular season.
Well, I'll say this. Last night, Javier for the Astros had been almost unhittable in his starts, and then he got lit up. For the Phillies tonight, pitcher that's on the mound, he has been really great in his 3 appearances in the postseason, but he wasn't that great in the regular season. So it makes me wonder a little bit if the law of averages might catch up to him as well. And if that happens and the Diamondbacks get off to an early lead in this game, that home field advantage, and we've seen this with the Braves a little bit. I think we saw this with the Braves probably in game 1 against Philadelphia, where when you get punched in your mouth at home, and if the crowd starts to sit on their hands, you get a little bit nervous, and you can feel it. It becomes palpable. And baseball is the type of sport where being tight doesn't really work.
You're right.
I don't know. We'll see. I think the Phillies need to get out to an early lead, and then let that snowball with that crowd that can be just wild at the bank.
The Braves were so deflated in that game 1 at home.
They were right. There was no. I wasn't there.
Yeah.
But everyone said there was just no juice.
You have tens of thousands of people in the ballpark.
Yeah.
They recorded a record crowd.
Yeah.
Yet you could hear a penny drop in that ballpark that night.
And relatively early, right?
Yeah.
It
Oh
was
my
like
gosh,
5th inning,
yes.
6th inning. You start to get this feeling of, is this really happening? So if Philadelphia can avoid that, I think they'll be fine. But if it starts to, if it's 3-1 or 4-1 Arizona, and it gets to be 5th or 6th inning, and you start going, okay, we have 9 outs left in our season, it can get pretty nervy. So.
But Fred, I hope you don't get mad at me for saying this.
Go ahead.
Last night you were talking about how because you're a Boston fan,
Yeah.
you don't
No, go
care
ahead.
for you don't care for like the Philly sports scene that much,
Mm-hmm.
which is understandable. But you said that at first you were like, I don't want the Phillies to win, but then
Yeah.
you were like, what, it might even be better if they do win, and then lose in the World
So
Series
Philadelphia's
again.
got this thing going where they've been runner-up quite a bit, right? From the MLS to
The NFL last
to
year.
the NFL to Major League Baseball. So it's kind of fun in a way, being so close.
But wait, tell me. I think you did tell me last night. Where does the hatred derive from again?
Well, I mean, it goes back for me being a Boston fan, an older one at that, to the 80s, really, with, Bird and
go.
Dr. J and those teams, just not liking each other. So it starts there, but, and Philly fans are...
Insufferable.
They're a little bit like, they're very loyal, and they're a little bit like Boston fans, but they just have this edge to them that I think no other fan base has. They just
Why do you think they
batteries.
got
They
that
threw
way?
batteries at Santa. That's like, and love to tell that story.
Yeah, I mean, and didn't I think a fan tried to bring a gator. Was that at that ballpark, Ellie? Yeah, at Philly's ballpark. A fan tried to bring a gator in there, which actually is a great transition to our next topic.
Let's go.
Yeah, Florida, Georgia,
Yes.
Florida, whatever you want to call it. I got an email. I got to
Cocktail
say
party.
it. Fred, I got an email overnight.
Saying?
And somebody who watches us,
Yeah, okay.
and I love getting emails, but he was super nice. Like, Emily, you do a great job, but
Yeah.
you keep saying Florida, Georgia. And I need you to understand that Georgia fans don't like that.
Okay.
It's got to be Georgia, Florida if you're in this state.
Oh, all right.
So, I think it rolls off the tongue better, Florida, Georgia. But for the purpose of this one email and this one moment, I'm going to call it Georgia, Florida. All right. So
Okay.
nobody can say that I didn't do it at least
right.
once.
You have to be fair.
Yeah, that's right. So how are you feeling entering this game? And I do want to ask you, do you still think, because you and I have talked about this, and this was, I don't know how many weeks ago,
Yeah.
but we both agreed that we thought that because of how Georgia was playing, that Georgia would lose a game this season.
Yeah.
I still think I believe that. And I hate to say it, but I do think I believe that they will lose one. Do you still think that?
So they were in neutral last time we talked, right? The engine was on, but it was just kind of, they weren't really moving like they should. And then they played really well.
Kentucky.
Just smacked Kentucky.
The
right?
one convincing win this season.
Yeah. And
then
it went
normal.
Kentucky, then Vandy, right? And Vandy
Correct.
was a little bit of a little sleep, but that's almost understandable to some degree.
Okay.
I think, anyway.
All right.
Beck's been better.
He has.
Obviously, Bowers not having him's a big hit.
Yeah.
So I don't think they lose this week.
Okay.
Even though Graham Mertz there for Florida, his numbers are really, really comparable to Beck's. So he hasn't been bad. I know Florida's lost a couple of games. I think it could be a competitive game, even though the Dogs are 14.5-point favorites without Brock Bowers. So what do you think Brock Bowers means to the line in a game like this? Like 14.5, if he was healthy, 17.5?
I think he means at least a touchdown.
Really? So you think it would be over 20 point favorites?
I think, had he not played in, let's just take it back and let's
Yeah.
go back to Auburn, where they almost lost at Auburn. His game-winning touchdown was everything. His experience, the fact that Carson Beck, that's his favorite target.
Yeah.
I mean, without Brock in that game, I really don't think the Dogs would have won. And I say that to anybody who's willing to listen. Now, obviously, you can't turn back the hands of time, and replay everything that we wouldn't know. But in my opinion, had it not been Brock playing and getting that pass and going into the end zone, that wouldn't have happened, and the Dogs would have already lost, the game.
So I think this Georgia team is the kind of team that the longer they go without getting upset, the better chance, this is going to sound kind of dumb, but the better chance they have of going unbeaten. Because I do think that the more Kirby can mold these guys, a lot of, some newer guys and some of the guys who were big parts of the championship teams, they start to smell it again, right? They start to feel it again.
Yep.
And the farther they can get into the season and still be unbeaten, they would come together as opposed to because they did have to squeak out the Auburn game, but they haven't exactly been lucky this year. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like
They've
a situation
come from
where
behind and
Yeah.
won, and not luck. I agree with you. That was all hard work.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
There was a gut check.
Correct.
At Auburn. So
and against South Carolina.
true. That's right.
Because both of those
Yeah.
games, they came from behind. I think they were down 2 touchdowns, or at least 2 scores against South Carolina at the half.
It just seems a little different with Beck right now. And how much do you think getting Ladd back at receiver, and him getting healthier, presumably? So now they have some pretty good talent outside now. So no Bowers, but
No Bowers, but yes, if Ladd were back 100% and he played the minutes he played last season, I wouldn't be as concerned. And I'm not truly concerned about Florida, Georgia, or Georgia, Florida. I'm concerned maybe, Ellie will like this. I'm maybe concerned against Mizzou. I'm maybe concerned against Ole Miss. I'm maybe concerned against.
Okay. All right, so you feel pretty good this week.
This week I'm not worried about because
Yeah.
Florida hasn't been consistent enough,
Right.
and I
Up
do
and
think
down.
the Dogs will be able to handle business in Jacksonville. However, I don't know if the next 3 games and going to Tennessee, that's tough. And Ladd McConkey right now, the thing with him is I don't know if you've noticed this, and I don't know how much you actually watch of every down of football that they play on Saturdays, but the first half he's fine. They put him in the game. Kirby Smart puts him in the game, and he seems to be quote unquote fine. But the problem comes when he goes to the locker room at halftime.
Okay.
His back gets tight, and he can't loosen it back up, and that's why you don't really see him the second half of games.
Okay.
And Kirby explained that to us after the Vanderbilt game, because obviously now the pressure is going to be put on him and other guys, Oscar Delp or even Lawson Lucky, who, by the way, I keep saying it, but I'm excited to see it. If Lawson Lucky lives up to the hype, he might be even better than Brock, which is unheard of.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, he is good, but he's coming off of the same surgery that Brock just had, tightrope surgery, and he's still a freshman. But it's going to be interesting to see. And the thing is like you don't really lose leadership when you lost Brock Bowers, and I'm talking about vocal leadership because he doesn't speak up.
Right.
He's not like in the locker room at halftime when they're like behind, like rallying the troops. That's not what he's doing. He leads by example. So that is one thing.
He just catches the huge touchdowns.
Correct.
Back ahead.
That's what counts. But he's not the one in the locker room like doing all the giving the speeches and all that stuff.
I know
what
you're saying.
He's keeping to himself. But I will say, like, Georgia's defense this season, that's the one thing that I really want to, like, I guess it's
tighten up.
What
100%.
surprised me the most, or what has surprised me, is the fact that defense has not performed up to what we thought they would.
Right. I agree, because to this point, I've seen Beck get more and more comfortable. His numbers were really good from the start. But it seems like a different type of command now of the offense, the running game. Like when he can throw it well, the running game does better. But the defense has just kind of been there. Like they're good enough, but we've just come to expect dominance.
Absolutely. And with Kirby Smart running the team, defense is his baby.
Right.
You would think that they would have a better showing week in and week out. And like at Vanderbilt, Vandy just marched right down the field, scored on the opening drive. Like you never saw that last season.
You could not even imagine that happening.
Or the
with
season
some
before.
Of these, with the last two teams.
No, heck no.
Right. It was not like that at all. It was Vandy did not want to be on offense.
It's true. What and I guess on the leadership point that I just talked about Brock Bowers, I think the defense, and nobody said this to me, this is just me saying my opinion, I think they lack. Georgia's defense lacks a voice, a very loud voice. Because in years past, I can tell you who they were. Like Nolan Smith last season, even when he was injured in the Florida-Georgia game, never played again, he was still on the sidelines and in the locker room yelling, screaming, being a vocal leader to the guys, even though he couldn't play. I mean, every season since I've covered the Dogs, I can tell you, like, who the vocal guy is on defense, and I can't truly pinpoint who that is this year. It might be Jamon Dumas-Johnson, and I say might because I'm not even sure about that. Right. The linebacker who played exceptionally well last season, and he's playing okay this year. Is it Javon Bullard, who's still a very young pup, and I expect next season will be his last season. He's going to head out and go to the NFL. But you just got to wonder who is doing that work for the guys who were doing it in years past. And I just don't think they have it.
One of the things about having greatness for a couple of years, with those guys move on, they go to the NFL, and there's a void.
Yeah.
And somebody's got to fill it. So you even have some guys who, like you said, may not be the vocal leaders, but they benefited greatly from having those other guys, Dean or
Jordan Davis,
Smith, Jordan Davis, all those guys in the locker room the last couple of years and on the field, and now they're looking for someone else to step up. So maybe though with the bye and everything else, this is the week that we start to say, okay, they still got it because they have the talent. Yeah. There's no doubt about that.
I don't think through 7 weeks of football. I mean we're past 7 weeks now, but through their first 7 games, to me, and this is I guess one of the bigger issues is that they don't have an identity yet. I mean this team, they've been so all over the map that. To me, I'm like, what's our identity? I don't know, and that's a coach's problem.
Right, and we do want to get to the Falcons. The last thing though that I will say about the Dogs is a lot of people starting to put Michigan, as the better, which I think is a good thing. I think that's a good thing. Yeah, because I think if everybody had a loss and it's just like, oh, it's the Dogs, but maybe they can over time. If everyone's just like, oh yeah, Michigan's just going to handle UGA, if it gets to that can I could fire up a little bit.
I do think I do. You want to know what I thought really quickly when you said Michigan? Like, of course, they're going through an investigation right now on supposedly some staff members or 1 or 2 or whatever it is stealing signs from other teams and going and attending these games and literally just for the purpose of stealing signs. Well, whoever went 2 years ago when Georgia handed Michigan one of their biggest losses in Miami, you obviously didn't get that right.
Right. And the thing was with this, so people pointed out some big Michigan losses. and they came in non-conference type situations where they weren't able to do it, where the other team had a lot of time to prepare. But Coach Prime today said, in football, the other team could mail you send you the playbook in the mail, and you still need to stop it. So he poo-pooed it a lot. He was like, look, I mean, he likened it back to when he was on the Cowboys. He said you knew Emmitt Smith was getting the ball. You knew Michael Irvin was running comebacks. You knew Novacek was going down the seam. Stop it.
Yeah, that is your job.
That's a good point.
Moving on to the Falcons really quickly. We don't have much time left. And speaking of investigations, the NFL, ESPN reported the NFL is looking into what's going on with the Falcons as far as Bijan Robinson this past weekend.
Yeah.
They don't like the fact, or at least they're wondering why the Falcons never indicated anything about Bijan on their injury report throughout the week, because he obviously didn't play, but a couple of snaps on Sunday against the Bucs. He had a bad headache, but the NFL's like, wait a minute, like, when did this happen? What's going on? Why did you never let your opponent know? I mean, you have to in the NFL, right?
Yeah, I guess we don't. I don't really know exactly what the protocol is. So they must be talking about game day, because obviously a headache is not something that you're going to have like on a Thursday and still have on a Sunday, most likely, right? And if it was a migraine, that can come on and that can have a huge impact on your ability to see. I was telling some people the other day the Terrell Davis story from the Super Bowl. He played almost an entire Super Bowl with a migraine that at times was so bad he couldn't see. And Shanahan or whoever was like, you just need to go on the field for this goal line play. We're not giving you the ball, because he was like, I can't see. And they said, you're just a decoy.
That's right.
And they play action faked him. So I think if fantasy football and legalized gambling did not exist,
this wouldn't
be a big story, right? Right?
No, I mean, I think there is something to that, yes.
Unless there's another reason.
Yeah.
But if he had a headache or a migraine and just wasn't able to go, and it was too late to inactivate him, and so that's because people are like, why was he in uniform?
I feel like it's never too late, Fred.
Never too late. What, to deactivate him?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Sit him down and take your helmet off.
Another thing though is a headache that can go away. Right? Or migraine can go away.
You're bringing up great points. Do you think, though, for this weekend, let's move on from Bijan, who I think will play this weekend.
Yeah.
We'll hear from the team tomorrow. Is Arthur Smith going to do the most this weekend against his former team? Like, do you think he's going to this is the game he wants? I mean, he obviously wants to win all of them, but like, he is eyeing this game.
Well, it's tough to go into a Mike Vrabel coach team and get them coming off a bye, even though they did just trade former All-Pro safety, and who knows? There's a lot of guys I think they're wondering if they're going to be there after Halloween in Tennessee. This is another one of those measuring stick games. Titans aren't very good this year. Ryan Tannehill's not practicing. You're either getting Malik Willis or the rookie Levis. So Falcons got to win this game. You're tops in your division. You have to go into Tennessee and win.
It's another give me game, in my opinion. Just you got to do it on the road, and
Yeah, which is never easy in the NFL.
And when it comes to Desmond Ridder, you can't trust the guy not to throw interceptions, but at least he got his first road win as a starter for the Falcons at the Bucs. He got that out of the way. Maybe he can make it 2 in a row. Fred, I'm going to give you 10 seconds, maybe 20. Since you're my guest, I need to know what's on your mind today.
Atlanta United, we didn't talk about them, but we will be soon enough, right?
Yes.
MLS playoffs starting, and I think the East is a little wide open, so that ought to be interesting. Maybe the United can make a little run. They feel pretty good about the way they're playing.
They do, but for me, I think we've talked about teams with inconsistencies throughout this show, and to me, I have not seen enough from them this season to believe that they can pull it off and move on to the next round. Though I am happy that they made it to the playoffs. That is an improvement from last season. So we can at least say that. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Emily Gagnon, Fred Campagna. Fred, it's always great to have you.
Great
have
to
a
be
good
here.
night, everyone.
See ya.